This story is so unbelievable. Most people think it's a movie, but it actually happened. It was the morning of February 28, 1997. Los Angeles looked like any other day. People were driving to work. Children were going to school. No one had any idea that within minutes, an entire neighborhood would become a battlefield. Just before 10 a.m., two men pulled up outside a Bank of America in North Hollywood. Their names were Larry Phillips Jr. and Emil Matasaryanu. But these weren't ordinary bank robbers. Both men wore homemade body armor covering most of their bodies. They carried illegally modified automatic rifles, handguns, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. They had spent months preparing. Their plan was simple: walk in, steal the money, disappear before police arrived. Inside the bank, they forced everyone to the floor and demanded cash. But something had already gone wrong. A silent alarm had alerted the police. As the robbers walked out carrying bags of money, police officers were already waiting. Then, the first shots were fired. Within seconds, the parking lot exploded into chaos. The robbers opened fire with automatic rifles, spraying bullets in every direction. Police returned fire, but their bullets barely had any effect.
The homemade armor stopped most of the rounds. The officers quickly realized they were completely outgunned. Most only carried 9mm pistols and shotguns. Against automatic rifles, they stood almost no chance. Some officers hid behind patrol cars. Others rescued civilians trapped in the crossfire. One group of officers made a desperate decision. They ran into a nearby gun store and borrowed more powerful rifles. Meanwhile, the gunfight spread into the streets. Cars crashed as terrified drivers tried to escape. People hid inside buildings. News helicopters arrived overhead, broadcasting everything live across America. For 44 terrifying minutes, the city watched what looked like a war. Nearly 2,000 rounds were fired. Eventually, one robber's rifle malfunctioned. Surrounded and wounded, he took his own life. The second robber jumped into the getaway car and tried to escape, but after crashing into parked vehicles, he was forced to continue on foot. Police finally noticed one weakness. His legs weren't fully protected by armor. Officers shot him in the lower legs, ending the gunfight. He later died from his injuries. When it was finally over, 12 police officers and 8 civilians had been injured. Miraculously, not a single innocent civilian was killed. The North Hollywood Shootout shocked the entire country. It exposed how unprepared police were for heavily armed criminals, and it permanently changed police equipment and tactics across the United States. Even today, it's remembered as one of the most intense gun battles in American history. Imagine boarding a normal flight, only to realize you're about to become part of one of the most terrifying survival stories ever recorded. On November 23, 1996, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961 took off from Addis Ababa. There were 175 people on board: families, business travelers, tourists. At first, everything seemed completely normal. But just minutes after takeoff, 3 hijackers suddenly stood up. They stormed the cockpit and demanded that the pilots fly to Australia. There was one problem. The plane didn't have nearly enough fuel. The captain repeatedly explained that reaching Australia was impossible. The hijackers refused to believe him. They thought the pilots were lying, so they threatened to kill everyone on board unless the plane kept flying. Hour after hour, the aircraft burned through its remaining fuel. Passengers watched nervously as the engine slowly began shutting down. The pilots knew exactly what was coming. The plane would soon fall out of the sky. With almost no fuel left, the captain spotted the islands of Comoros in the Indian Ocean. He made one desperate decision. He would try to land the plane on the water. As the aircraft descended, the hijackers continued fighting the pilots inside the cockpit. Seconds later, the left wing struck the ocean. The plane spun violently before breaking apart across the water. It looked impossible to survive.
But incredibly, many passengers escaped from the wreckage. Local fishermen and nearby boats rushed to rescue survivors from the sea. Out of the 175 people on board, 125 lost their lives, but 50 survived one of the most terrifying plane crashes in history. Even more incredible, a tourist relaxing on the beach had been filming the ocean at the exact moment the aircraft crashed. The entire impact was captured on video. To this day, Flight 961 remains one of the only major plane crashes ever recorded from the ground. It wasn't just a hijacking. It became one of aviation's greatest stories of courage, survival, and impossible decisions under unimaginable pressure.
Imagine escaping from the most secure prison in the world. A prison surrounded by freezing water, filled with deadly currents, where no one had ever successfully escaped. That was Alcatraz. Located on a small island in San Francisco Bay, Alcatraz held America's most dangerous criminals. The guards believed escape was impossible. Even if someone made it outside, the icy water would kill them long before they reached land. But 3 prisoners had a different plan. Frank Morris, along with brothers John and Clarence Anglin, spent months secretly preparing for the impossible. Using nothing more than stolen spoons, homemade tools, and a homemade drill, they slowly chipped away at the concrete behind the air vents in their cells. Every night, they worked while music played through the prison speakers, hiding the sound of the drilling. Behind the walls, they built a hidden workshop. There, they created one of the most incredible escape plans ever imagined. Using over 50 stolen raincoats, they hand-stitched an inflatable raft and homemade life jackets. To fool the guards, they sculpted fake heads out of soap, paper, and concrete dust. They even attached real human hair collected from the prison barbershop. The fake heads looked so realistic that guards believed the prisoners were asleep. On the night of June 11th, 1962, the 3 men crawled through the holes behind their cells. They climbed through maintenance tunnels, reached the prison roof, and quietly made their way down to the shoreline. There, they inflated the homemade raft. Without making a sound, they disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, guards entered the cells. At first, everything looked normal. Then one officer touched a prisoner's head. It rolled off the pillow. The entire prison exploded into panic. Helicopters searched the bay. Boats scanned the water. The FBI launched one of the largest manhunts in American history. But the 3 men were never found. Some investigators believe they drowned in the freezing currents. Others believe they survived, started new lives, and escaped forever. More than 60 years later, no one knows the truth. The FBI officially closed the case, but the mystery remains unsolved. To this day, the escape from Alcatraz is still considered one of the greatest prison escapes in history, and one of America's biggest unsolved mysteries.
The Antwerp Diamond Heist. This wasn't just a robbery. It was the most sophisticated diamond heist in history. In the heart of Antwerp, Belgium, there was a vault believed to be impossible to break into. It held diamonds, gold, cash, and priceless jewelry worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The security was unlike anything most people had ever seen. Motion sensors, heat detectors, seismic sensors, magnetic locks. A vault door weighing several tons. Experts believed it was completely impossible to rob. But one man thought otherwise. His name was Leonardo Notarbartolo. For years, he carefully planned what would become one of the greatest heists ever attempted. He even rented an office inside the Diamond Center to earn everyone's trust. Day after day, he studied the building. He learned the guards' routines. He secretly gathered information about every layer of security. Then, one weekend in February 2003, the plan began. Late at night, his team entered the building without forcing the front entrance. One by one, they defeated every security system. They covered motion sensors, disabled alarms, unlocked the massive vault, and opened more than 100 safety deposit boxes. Inside were diamonds, gold, cash, and jewelry worth an estimated $100 million.
Without firing a single shot, the crew disappeared into the night. The police couldn't believe it. There were no fingerprints, no broken locks, almost no evidence. It looked like the perfect crime. But then, everything fell apart because of one small mistake. While dumping trash in a nearby forest, the thieves left behind a half-eaten sandwich. Police recovered DNA from it. The discarded evidence led investigators to Leonardo Notarbartolo. He was arrested and sentenced to prison. But here's the incredible part. Most of the diamonds were never recovered. To this day, no one knows exactly where they ended up. Many investigators believe someone is still sitting on one of the biggest fortunes ever stolen. The Antwerp Diamond Heist remains one of the greatest robberies in history, proving that sometimes the smallest mistake can destroy the most perfect plan.